Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Carvel Community Meeting. Today's date is August 9th, 2023. If you're watching this recording from home, we encourage you to come join us live. It's a great opportunity for you to come and listen in on what the maintainers are working on, ask questions, provide feedback. If you have anything you need help with in any of the tools, you can also come and ask your questions in that regards too. And the team is more than happy to help you work through anything that you have issues with. It's also a good way to meet other members of the community outside of the maintainers, just kind of hang out and listen in. Participation's not required. So if you just want to lurk, that's totally fine too. For those that are on the meeting, just make sure if you have anything you wish to discuss, add that to the discussion topic section here at the bottom. And then also make sure you add your name to the attendees list here in any organization that you are representing. And that is optional, but we like to keep track of who all is attending our meetings. And those that are watching, if you are unable to attend these meetings and you still want to get a hold of us, there are other ways to reach out. You can find us in the Carvel channel in the Kubernetes Slack workspace. You can email us. You can, of course, find us in any of our GitHub repos. You can find us on Twitter or Twixer or X or whatever you want to call it now, at Carvel_dev. And at any point that you are interacting with us or any other members of the community, we do ask that you please read and abide by our code of conduct, which is linked here. It's linked throughout all of our repos as well. If you are using any of the Carvel tools, we are asking for more details on how folks are using Carvel. So we created this pinned issue. And it just asks for you to provide a few details about yourself, any organization that you are working for that uses the tools, contact information, and your use case for how you're using the Carvel tools, as well as a PNG version of your logo. This is just a way for us to really understand how people are using the tools, kind of gives us a better idea of the tools usage and kind of understand how we further develop the tools, because the maintainers, they work on the tools and they can see it in action, kind of in a silo, but it's really helpful for us to understand how others are using it and their use cases to really get a more fully rounded picture of the tools themselves. And it also helps other members of the community understand how they can also use the tools. So it's really helpful all around if you're able to put a comment into this issue and how you're using any of the Carvel tools. Right, moving on to announcements. So we got a new hire. I believe they started last week. So Mahan, you want to just introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. So, hey team, I'm Madan. So I recently joined Carvel community last week, and before that I was last few years I was part of Kubernetes as well as OpenShift community, and I made my contributions there as well. So looking forward to add more value to Carvel toolkit. Thank you.
Welcome. Super excited to have you.
Yeah, I'm excited too.
Moving on to content. So this week, the Choose Your Own Adventure team did a live video deployed to production and database implementation. It was a way for them to sort of showcase all the tools that have been chosen throughout their Choose Your Own Adventure series. If you're not familiar with that series, the team, the duo, goes through all the tools in the CNCF landscape and kind of goes from throughout the production process, deploying into production process, and kind of chooses different tools in each episode that are similar and showcases what each tool does, and then the audience votes on which tool to move forward with. And so they did an episode here in which a couple of the Carvel tools had been chosen already. So feel free to check that out. Gives you a good idea of how you can use all the different tools in the CNCF landscape, because I know it can be pretty daunting to try and choose one. Moving on to so a blog post. I wrote a blog post. It is something that is near and dear to my heart, and it's just about my experience when I was in KubeCon Amsterdam. The Carvel team, we went with the intention of trying to gain more contributors, more interest in contributing to the Carvel tools. And when I started talking to some other folks that were part of other projects and asking, just kind of talking to them about what our goals were, and they said, oh yeah, us too. And like, we're dealing with a lot of attrition, even folks that really enjoy working on the project, they went on to a new company, and so they left as a maintainer of our project. And so started thinking about how it seems as though if someone is not paid to work on an open source project, it's really difficult for them to justify staying and putting forth the work and whatnot. So this sort of goes over that, and then thinking about a new approach of how to gain new contributors. If there's any individuals out there that would like to contribute, or if there's specific companies that are using the Carvel tools and are interested in partnering and having their employees, pay for their employees to work on open source projects, and Carvel specifically, we would like to talk to you. So created this short form to gather those details, and then we will be reaching out with further information and see how we can all work together and help build Carvel into a really robust and successful tool set. Other ways you can help Carvel succeed if you're not interested in that, I've listed out here as well. So go ahead and give that blog post a read. Would really appreciate it. And yeah, thank you. Upcoming potentially, as far as content, I feel like I've been talking for like an hour already. Just talking. All right. So upcoming, we have potentially, we're hoping we can figure out something for Thomas to present his talk that he did at Kubernetes Community Day in Munich. I'm missing an I there. And because it wasn't recorded, but I think it'd be really a great presentation to still do in some way. So I started kind of thinking about like, well, we now have our own YouTube, so maybe we can start like a new series where we're doing live presentations on our YouTube. So stay tuned for that. I gotta think about how to best do this, but we'll let you know when we get that booked. Thomas, do you have anything else you want to say on that?
No, not really. But yeah, I'd be happy to share the presentation online on the Carvel channel. So since, unfortunately it wasn't recorded, so I cannot share it with you.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Then if you have anything that you wish to share, so if you have a blog post that you've written up on Carvel tools, if you want to do a workshop or a webinar, if you have anything, anything related to Carvel that's content, we created this content sharing doc where you can add your name, the date that you think it's going to go live, the topic that you're covering, what kind of medium you're delivering that topic in, Twitter handle, which is optional, and we'll check it out and make sure we promote it. And then we also would love to send you some Carvel swag. So if you do that, we'll definitely send you shirt, hoodie, beanie, all the fun stuff. And if you have any questions on that, just let me know. Releases, don't believe we had any releases since we last met. Now we're moving on to status updates. Let's see who's on. Is anyone able to give any update on the YTT? I know Varsha's been leading that. It doesn't look like she's here.
Who's going? Or I can go.
I can. Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Sonik.
Okay. I think last we talked about this, we are sort of waiting on some input from the polls. Like, how did those go? What were folks leaning towards? Because I think the general sentiment was that the problem we are trying to solve is not exactly just emitting comments, but something that could be done as a result of it. So yeah, like I guess that's what we are waiting on, because the proposal itself is pretty static right now. It's not changing. That's what we wanted to, that feedback is what we wanted to aggregate and sort of decide further steps. So I think that's where we are at with this proposal.
Yeah, I think I'll go
Given the-
back. Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to add, given the complexity of the ask of emitting YTT as YTT comments itself, I think this thing might go back into the icebox.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, that's good information. I know that it seemed like there was a 50-50 split between the Slack votes that we got in terms of like when we asked internally and then also outward to the community. So I'll put the results that we had so far. I'll add that to this agenda after the meeting so we can just have that on record. Any other comments on this or questions? Okay, moving on to the other point in the roadmap, something that Thomas has been working on and just had an update to this week. Thomas, you want to talk about this?
Yes, so it was based on the initial issue on the Carvel project about adding signature and SALSA attestations to improve the supply chain security posture around Carvel. So this first proposal is about introducing signatures for all the Carvel artifacts, both the container images and the CLIs, using SigStore cosign. Yeah, so the proposal explains how to do that with cosign. In these two cases, with container images, is more straightforward and transparent because everything goes through the container registry. For the CLIs, just like when we have to check for the checksum, we have to do some manual step to verify that. But for GitHub Actions, since we have all our pipelines in Carvel on GitHub, then we can use the official action that comes from the SigStore project to set up cosign. It will be without key management, at least that's the proposal, to use the keyless functionality. So the signature is tied to the identity that is generated by GitHub for the specific workflow reference. So we don't have to manage any keys rotating or securing keys, which is quite convenient, both for maintaining these, but also for end users. Yeah, I have listed all the artifacts I managed to find with some examples, also an example on how to verify signatures on Kubernetes using Kyverno as an example. And added some references to different documentation around supply chain security and how to work with signatures in that regard. So I'd appreciate any feedback and what you think about the proposal, if you have any questions.
Wow, this is incredible. Thanks, Thomas, for all the work you did here. This is amazing.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions for Thomas?
This is awesome work, Thomas. Thanks for putting this together. I think now it's on the maintainers to see how we put this. How do we take this proposal forward? So.
Yeah,
I draw.
Thank you.
Yeah. Let's take out some time to discuss this in coming weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, Samik said I'm going to take a swing at a review. Okay, then the next item on the roadmap is Carvel supports the ability to sign and verify assets. Who can speak on this?
Yep, that's me. So I've been putting together like a very skeleton baseline for this, and there's a lot to flesh out. But what I did do is I started a baseline doc in a HackMD, which just sort of enumerates the goals and the types of users that we are trying to address here. And it actually also takes into account some of Thomas's work. So I think, Thomas, like a lot of the Kverna stuff you worked on would really be great if we just copy some of it over here. So it's focused on two things primarily. So we essentially have two things when it comes to signing and verifying. We want to be able to verify our container images inside our packages, and we want to be able to verify the package bundles themselves. For the first one, Thomas has actually come up with a pretty great way of doing it, integrating with Kverna. I think it would be also interesting to look at maybe some of the competitors, like I guess, competitor is not the right word, like alternative approaches. And that's something I'd like to do. And for the other part, of course, for verifying and signing package bundles, that could be enabled more by some changes on our tools. And the proposal section essentially sort of lists an order in which things can be done. And these are the sections that need to be fleshed out with like very exact details and examples. And that's what I'll be doing next. Other than that, I believe one useful metric would be to sort of document what the existing process is. Like users can do parts of this today by using tools around Carvel and sort of compare the processes and how we'll be improving the experience, right? And like, I'm happy to collaborate on this. Thomas has already raised his hand, thankfully. So I'm going to raise a PR for this, and I'm hoping to sort of gather comments here. This is going to be a longer term effort, but we're going to keep adding information here.
All right, thanks, Samik. Any questions or comments on this? Okay, moving on to the backlog. We got image package stuff being worked on. Anything further to add here or to talk about? It might have been Joel that put this here. He's not here. All right, I'm gonna move on. Mentorship project. Yes, we are part of the Linux Foundation mentorship project. It's our first time. So I know Renu and Samik. Well, looks like Renu, are you just the only one, or is Samik helping at all?
Samik is definitely helping on this one. I do not know why only my name is coming up as mentor here, but Samik is also a mentor on this one. I will probably have to talk with the LFX folks what is happening.
Okay.
If you go to the README, which is there for this term of mentorship, Samik is also listed, just as clarification. So we are getting a lot of mails, and we are also listed as the first project because it starts with C, Carvel, which is, I think, which is an advantage for us. We are getting a lot of pings requesting more details. And then we have some mentees also which have applied for this. So we'll have to, by 16th of August, we will probably need to make a decision. I wanted to ask you, Nancy, how would that go? Is it a mentee would be assigned to us, or would we have to select? And how do we communicate that? So that is something I think we'll have to figure out with the foundation folks.
Yeah, this is my first experience with this as well, from a start to finish. So I'm curious as to if you as a mentor get to choose the mentee. So are they, whenever someone applies, do you get any sort of notification?
I do not get any notification, but I do see them as the mentees who have applied. So maybe if I can share, as the mentor, probably I'm seeing more information than you are seeing. I could just show you what we are and what I'm seeing. So anybody who has applied for mentorship or for a project earlier and knows how this goes, do pitch in. So this is what I'm seeing. On a project, we have a list of folks who have applied for this, and some of them have submitted their resumes and stuff, and we need to then view those. You can download and check it out. This is how it works. So now but it doesn't say whether I can select or anything.
Yeah, I can ask Nate real quick. I'll just send him a DM real fast and ask him.
And then by 16th of August.
He's on vacation until next week. I can ask somebody else.
Okay. So what is mentioned is that by 16th of August, we have to, I think the mentees would be assigned, and 4th of September is when we can start off the project. So yeah, exciting.
Okay. So by the 16th of August, so next week?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Any comments or questions on that before we move on to the discussion topics? All right. Here we go. So Fritz, not pulling charts frequently for stable versions, caching. Would you like to share your screen for this?
Yeah, sure. I could quickly show you the problem, or explain the problem. Yeah, in a nutshell, our use case at GEC, German Edge Cloud, is such that we have a whole lot of a whole lot of clusters, around 30 clusters, and a couple of hundred applications that we have to deploy to those. And we are using vendir to do that. And so we pull in from a bunch of different upstream resources, mostly Helm charts, but also Git repositories and OCI images. And the trouble that we are having is, so all of these upstream resources have stable versions. Yet whenever we run our pipeline, so we vendir in the upstream resources, and we obtain the YAMLs, and we commit the YAMLs to our Git repository, and then we get Argo CD to deploy that. And every time we make a change, we have to re-render. And during this re-rendering process, given the way that vendir works, it has to pull all of these hundreds of applications again. And this means that the whole process takes close to 10 minutes at the moment. And so the proposal here was, and we already discussed this last week with the VMware guys, to introduce, well, maybe not a cache, but some kind of mechanism that reacts on whether the vendir YAML has changed, and only pulls in the resources, the upstream resources, if there is an actual change. And what I can show you is I have created a suggestion. We already, during the first meeting we discussed that maybe the vendir log YAML could be used for that. And I've submitted a pull request that is kind of a draft implementation of how this could work. And I can also demonstrate how it looks. So my proposal for the feature is a lazy flag. So this would just be an ordinary sync, syncing an upstream resource. And now, of course, if I execute it again, it will resync. That's the standard behavior. But if I defined lazy, it would basically figure out that the vendir YAML has not changed in comparison to the log file, and therefore don't do the sync. And the way this is implemented is with a hash value in the log, which is basically a hash of a section of the vendir YAML. So looking at this, it's basically it's for this particular path entry, it's building a hash on the entire configuration of this entry. So whatever the user changes here then will lead to the hash changing and then vendir running again. So if I was to actually introduce a change, then and then do the lazy sync, then it would try to sync again. And yeah, this is it in a nutshell. For us, it would be tremendously useful. We currently built around this feature. Our mechanism introduces some form of caching to provide the same functionality, but I feel that this could be very useful for vendir, because in my experience, if you have a stable release version, it is not a good practice to introduce changes to it, and this is why it usually doesn't happen. So it could be a good thing for the wider user base of vendir. You know, this is what I have. Any questions?
No questions, but this looks amazing and would be very beneficial as another vendir user. So huge plus from my side here. This looks great.
Thank you.
So looks like that you have the ash at the content level, right? It's at the path level. Do you have like an ash for every directory? Like if you have 5 directories, you'll have 5 ashes, or are you doing an ash for the full file? So what are you hashing there?
Every entry would have its own hash. Yeah. Our mechanism basically goes through them and syncs them separately using the directory flag of vendir. So we basically can deal with that. Our mechanism would be happy with that, like doing this on an entry level within the directory content, or no, let's say on a directory level.
So like, to what type of directories would this apply? Because for example, for Git, you cannot do that, right? Because if you're pulling master, you're not pulling a particular SHA, right? Which means that you need to download anything from there. Or if you're doing like an image and you're tagging it.
Yeah, exactly. Like you might have a Git repo that is tagged and it's stable, in which case you would want to activate this, or it might be master and you wouldn't want to activate this. But our idea to address this was to make this optional, so the user can choose either by adding a flag to the binary, or to have one could also put a setting into the vendir YAML. But the user should decide. The user should be able to switch this on, because only the user knows whether the upstream resource that he's pulling is actually stable or not.
Yeah, that makes sense. But that also like brings in the problem. Like if we just do a flag at the binary level, it means that will apply for the full vendir configuration, right? Which means that if in the same vendir configuration you're picking up things that are both stable and things that are not stable, then you'll have a problem. So that configuration would definitely have to be at the hash level. Sorry, at the hash level, at the directory level, right?
It would be more powerful there. I agree. It would already be, for us, it would already do a lot if it was applied on the binary level, because our vendir YAMLs are exclusively using stable versions. So again, the user could make a call. Does the vendir YAML contain all stable versions? Then yes, I can use the lazy flag. If not, he simply can't. But I agree, it would be more useful if it was in the vendir YAML at directory level.
Like at first glance, I don't see like a major issue with this, and it feels like that it's a good improvement. Like my main problem here is that the mix of having the possibility of having in the same vendir file both things that are final and things that are not, that can be changed. And apart from that, there's also the question of we have like versions on our on our APIs. I'm not 100% sure if we'd have to rev this up or not in order to add this change, but that's just like another conversation that we can have. Yeah, I don't know, like like at first glance, I don't see like an issue here. I know that Neil has been the person that has been working more on this, so I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to that you see there.
I was go ahead, Rohit. I was gonna throw it in
I
chat.
have one very basic question. Like can you explain like how the hash is being calculated? Like on the directory where it has synced the data, we are calculating the hash from that, or from the particular this configuration of this directory content itself we are calculating the hash from?
This thing is made into the hash for every
Okay.
path entry.
Okay. Okay, and okay, sure. So whatever is there which constitute configuration for that path, that is made into a hash.
Exactly. We felt it's, of course, you could maybe look into detail what exactly has changed and has it really an impact on the vendir output, but this would make this a lot more complicated. So for a simple implementation, at the moment, this draft implementation is just hashing the whole thing.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I think we're having a slight side conversation in the Zoom chat. The main thing I was bringing up was, I think this opens up the possibility of like divergence between what you've referenced in your vendir YAML and what's actually on your machine. If you forever say, don't touch this thing if it doesn't change in the vendir YAML. And for most cases, that's probably okay. Like you're not gonna typically manually edit something that vendir has brought down, but it's just like something to keep in mind that you're no longer potentially fully the same as upstream. So I think Praveen was suggesting it could be like a dangerous flag or like a, hey, here's some warnings.
I think if it's
Yeah.
add conflict, it should surface warnings when used. Sorry, I cut you off.
I just wonder about this. Is this typically something that your users do? You're aware of that? Like the way we use vendir, of course, like for obvious reasons, we don't modify what we want, what is in the vendor folder, because for what purpose? With the next sync, it will be overwritten. But is this something? Are there good use cases where people actually modify the files in the vendor folder?
I
I can
don't
give
know
you.
about good practices, but I have definitely seen it done many, many times. Just like I see people manually kubectl edit things instead of updating things in Git and having Argo CD pull them down. You know, I think there are bad practices that are very prevalent still out there. Whether there are also good practices around that, not that I know of, but unfortunately, bad practices are almost as prevalent as good practices in reality.
This is what I was wondering about, whether there's actually a good practice where you want to do that.
Fritz, also like an example which is close to you. You have a scripts directory, which with vendir is populated by some scripts from another repository, right? And then when you want to check out some things, you just go there and change the script, yeah, without moving changes first to the source repository. And when it's working as you like, then you move there and apply them. So this is what we were doing, I remember.
Yeah, but that's fine. I mean, next time you sync, this stuff is gone. It's ephemeral stuff. But I'm thinking of a meaningful use case where you actually want to, you vendor something, modify it, then you want to commit this to your Git repo. Sounds to me as if this is something that could be done, but it wouldn't be a good practice, basically, and subsequently wouldn't worry too much about it. But yeah, if there's a warning or something, at the end of the day, it's a user's choice whether he wants to activate this feature. So he should know what he's doing.
I can say the one use case that I've seen this done more often than others is when people vendor something into a larger project. They'll vendor in some component and they want to make changes locally before actually going and committing it to that upstream project. So they'll make local changes, and then the benefit of using vendir for all of that is that they literally vendir sync, and that gets rid of all their local changes, right? So yes, could they technically just have it be a Git initialized folder and then discard all local changes? There are other ways of doing it, but vendir, I have seen it used in that path before, where pull in some YAML from whatever, make your changes locally, see that you like it, and then go and contribute that upstream to whatever you're vendoring in.
But that sounds like a dangerous flag. It's just what we need here, just to declare and make a very clear statement. If you use this, it's at your own risk. If you actually edit the contents that are being fetched, those won't be resynced. That sounds like a good solution. At least enable the user to use it on his own accord if he wants to.
Yeah, and I think also possibly just sending out like warning messages in the STD out saying that directory X was not synced because it didn't change in vendor YAML, may not be in line with upstream, right? Or something to indicate to the user, hey, we didn't touch this folder with vendir, we just skipped completely over it. Use at your own risk, right? And if it's in an automation pipeline, great, doesn't matter, you don't think about it. But if someone's doing it on the CLI, at least it gives them that knowledge of, I used that flag, maybe I should get rid of it. Or maybe it fits them exactly.
Sounds fair.
And then we need a flag to discard this behavior if we want to force sync.
I just don't define it, and then it reverts back to syncing.
Yeah, I mean, like if you have the static flag in a YAML in vendir configuration, and then at some point you messed up directory, you have an option to go change the file, or you have an option to run it with a force flag. I don't know what would be easier, like, or more ergonomic, but personally for me would be just easier to run with a binary flag. Just force sync everything, like we do no matter what. Yeah, like, and the same, like if there are some caching mechanisms for like OCI images with a SHA, like probably there is a way to force sync that as well, or
delete the log file. Quick fix, delete the log file.
Oh, yeah. And that.
Yeah, so it feels like that now we're talking about a new version of a behavior, right? Because at this point in time, like if we define a flag, if we want to do this per directory, that would have to go into the configuration. So the flag no longer, like the flag, the -- lazy in the command line doesn't make sense anymore, right? Because it is already there on the configuration. You're telling it that you want to persist this, right? And then like we're talking about doing a -- force that could just basically not read the log file, right? And just ignore it.
Of course, but one option would also be to couple this lazy feature with a directory setting. If like it feels like the implementation in the vendir YAML would be more work intensive. And one could say, if you want to use lazy, then it is mandatory to also define a directory, and then you can use it. Would be also an option to get around this particular issue. Then we could stick to binary parameters.
Would you be okay with providing -- lazy in all the paths that you want to?
For us, this would work. For us, this would we use directory specific syncing exactly for the caching, to benefit from caching, and for our particular issue would be solved by that.
That would be solved, but to be honest, a configuration option for a particular directory, for a particular path, looks like a more ergonomic solution, because this will be declarative. This will not be a break-in change, because like you add a new, no one has to use it. And it kind of self-sustained. It's there. You don't need to add anything else.
I was going to say the same thing. I think that having it in a declarative format, the big benefit there is that when two people run the same vendir sync, if it's a flag, there is no certainty that two people are going to run with the same flag or the same directories or anything. So we get zero confidence that two people are going to get the same thing on their machines, versus if it was declarative, only if they change the file are they not going to get the same thing. So it's much more reproducible that way, which I think is important for something like vendir, to make sure that even if it's not what we necessarily lazy is for a specific use case, but we want to make sure that we have that same experience for anyone running the same simple vendir sync command.
Yeah, even though the feature only makes sense for vendir YAMLs that produce versions that don't change. So in regards to what you have vendored in, it should not make a difference whether you run lazily or not. You should have the same content. But okay, I mean, for me, that's a technical detail. Either solution would work. I was just thinking in terms of what is simpler for the implementation. Got the impression from looking at the code that using binary options would be easier, but for our problem at hand, either solution is just fine. So a question from my side, what would be now the logical, what would be the next steps regarding this feature? How could we push this forward?
So like in the end, we need to come up to a decision of where this is going to be implemented, right? Even though it is just a UX relative. So like, let me put this in the other way. It feels like that this feature is interesting, and it's really solving a problem that y'all are having, right? So like that's a good thing. That's what we want our tools to be. We need to be careful, because vendir in itself, in its essence, like the idea is that whenever you run vendir, you need to make sure that you get what you're asking for, right? Like, and we are skewing a little bit the behavior here, but I think that might be okay as long as this is like an opt-in thing. So for example, right now, vendir is able to cache OCI images, right? Like it can cache the OCI images locally for you. It doesn't have to go to the registry, as long as you provide the needed environment variables for it to do it, right? So I think that we are like in somewhat the similar situation here. So I do think that personally, I would prefer us to do a change on the vendir YAML and do per directory configuration, where we say that this is going to be, we want, like, if you can, please just save me this. Okay, we can discuss like what is the name of it later. I think that's not relevant for right now. And then eventually, I think we might have to have a flag added that would just say like, just even though there are like some directories here, let's ignore that are set to be cached. So let's ignore it and let's just pull everything anew, right? So like those are the two things that I believe that need to come in as part of this feature. Usually what we would do, because it's quite like a change on behavior, we would ask for a proposal to be done in order for us to go through this. If that's something that you all are interested in doing, I think that would be like the best way forward, so that we have an idea, and then at that point we can discuss like what is the name of like this flag, and what is the name of like this particular place, this particular key that we're going to add to the document, to the configuration. Should we rev our configuration API or not? And I think that if we can do that, like we have like more or less an agreement. So I think this is going to be a pretty fast track proposal here. So I think like the first step would be that, and then just go ahead and do the implementation.
And so what would come from us in this case? Would we write the proposal?
Yeah, I assume so, right?
Yeah. And the implementation, is that then something we could also provide, or you would? Yes.
No, like if you want to contribute it, we're not going to say no. We don't want your code, right? Like we want people to contribute to Carvel, right? Like we're just want to make sure that we have a that we have like understanding of like everybody, that like this is like a feature that's going to come into Carvel. So that's like the proposal part. And then if you all want to contribute to this feature, like we would be more than happy to look at it and to review your PRs, or if you need any help going forward with this, like we'd be more than happy to help out. Mm-hmm. But we're perfectly happy if you want to do everything.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So I guess we can take with us that we create a proposal, and I guess then this has to mature a bit, has to be discussed in your team, and then we take it from there.
So the idea is like we'd have, so like usually what we do in the proposals is somebody writes a proposal, we do some like give it like a week or something like that for people to get in some feedback, And in the next, after it gets in, like maybe a week later, we talk about it in this meeting, and then we discuss with it if it is okay, if it's not okay, if there's like more changes that we'd like to see, if there's anything that we think is problematic there. And if not, it just gets approved and that's it. So like usually like we can try to, this doesn't look like a very big proposal either. So I think it would be easier for us to fast track this and like, if you all can write the proposal till next week, we can discuss it in 2 weeks' time.
Okay.
And get it approved.
Awesome. Then I guess.
Just one question, like we are talking about having these setting rather than at the binary level, but in the vendor YAML configuration, which means we can have the liberty now to choose, for example, if we are trying to download from a Git branch, we can put that commit as a hash. I know it might make things complicated because we have multiple things to handle, like there are Helm charts or Git or HTTP and things like that. But what are your thoughts on that? Should we do that, or let's start simple and then see if we really need that in?
Or you're saying about the Git hash? So we are adding the hash for some things. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm saying like we are talking about in a Git branch, we will not know, like if we continue to calculate the hash from the strings, right? We'll not know whether something has changed or not. But by looking at the Git commit for a branch, we'll get to know definitely if something has changed on the Git and do we really need to vendor sync it again. So instead of storing the hash, which we make up from that Git configuration, we store the commit ID, which we get from the Git.
So like in some sense, I think this is a little bit different, right? Like this is this is like a blank cache that is driven by the vendir configuration itself, right? Like it's you that say like that you want to keep a particular folder untouched, right? It's not something that you want to have updated. So in some sense, I think it's a little bit different. So like if we were talking about a caching cache, really like just something that caches stuff, that would be something that we could have in 2 accounts, right? Like for example, if there is a SHA that we can store and say like, oh, do you have the same SHA or do I need to pull it? So that would be like a normal caching. In here, what we're saying is a little bit different. It's not really cache. It is, I don't want to update a folder. That's basically what we're saying here. It's like, I don't want this folder to update at all, unless I tell you to, right?
Okay. Okay, so even if there are changes, I just want to ignore them.
Yeah, like if I'm telling vendir to do not do anything on this folder, basically. So it's a little bit different than caching here.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry, I just added 2 links there. One is our proposals folder where we are starting the proposals, and the other one is another proposal that our friend Thomas just did. You can more or less have an idea of what is there. That's good.
Yeah, awesome. Can work with that. Thank you.
All right. Wow. Thank you for all of that. That was amazing to see all the discussion that happened with that and that contribution that you gave to us in terms of showing us and you know, working on this proposal. I think it's really good to see that collaboration. I know that we are right at time. And Thomas had 2 items he wanted to bring up. Thomas, do you think this is something you can speak on really briefly, or do you want to move it to Slack in the
Yeah, I
community?
can add it in Slack, like it's nothing urgent, and yeah, no problem.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Thomas. And all right, well, thank you again for everybody that attended today. It's really great to see folks outside of VMware and hearing on what you're working on, and seeing that drive to make the tools better on your end and to share that with the community. It really as a community manager, it's something that, you know, I really love to see. So thank you so much for coming and sharing.
It's also great to see that you're so open as a community for feedback from the outside. That's also very nice.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So if anyone else is out there, see, we don't bite. bring your comments, suggestions, anything. We'd love to hear it and have a full discussion on it. Again, thank you and have a good rest of your day. If you're watching this from home, come join us live. We'd love to meet you. All right, until next time, August 23rd is when we'll meet again. Bye.
Bye-bye.